Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. A good moed. Thank you for taking the time to get back and sing to join us this morning. We'll begin Parshas HaBracha. We're only going to spend 2 days today and tomorrow on HaBracha, but we'll get through a little bit, God willing. Chapter 33, verse 4. A very, very famous pasuk, but you might be surprised by how few times each word is actually said in the verse. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. The verse doesn't have Torah being repeated 5 times. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Moshe commanded us with the Torah, Morasha kilas Yaakov, an inheritance for the congregation of Jacob, for the Jewish people. So let's see the Ramban on this pasuk. Torah tziva lanu Moshe hatam sheyisa tamid v'yomar Torah tziva lanu Moshe. The idea is that a person should always kind of raise the banner, so to say, and say, that Torah, the Moshe instructed us with this Torah, v'hitia morasha l'kilas Yaakov, and that this Torah will be an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob. Kiladoros olam kol bnei Yaakov yirashua v'yishmeru osa, that for eternity, all of the descendants of the Jewish people will inherit it and will guard and observe it. Kilo si shachach mipizaro. The Torah will never be forgotten from the offspring of the Jewish people. Now that, of course, is not to say that every Jew will always study and observe the Torah. We know that's not the case, but the point is there will always be a Torah study and observance among the Jewish people. And that's what it means that it's morasha. It's more than it's a gift. It will always be there. It's a very interesting thing to think about. I suppose this is part of the intent of the Ramban. In Torah law, if someone is an heir, they inherit something whether or not they want it. In other words, if a person passes away, and in Torah law, I'm not talking about a will right now, just about let's say a person had no person passes away. There's Torah hierarchy for who the heirs are. Those people, once the individual passes away, they automatically become the owners. If they don't want it, it's theirs anyway. They could always relinquish it if they want, but then that would be them getting rid of it. A gift, theoretically at least, if I don't want to accept a gift, I don't have to accept your gift. It's more than a gift. It's an inheritance. It will always be among the Jewish people. It's an interesting idea. V'darshu Rabbeinu Shelo Omar Morasha Beis Yaakov Uzer Yaakov. What a strange thing. If we use the language of Morasha, which is inheritance, you would think the language by which the Jewish people are referenced would be a family-oriented language. As if we're talking about an inheritance, it should say it's an inheritance to the house of Jacob or to the offspring of Jacob. V'Omar Kihilas Yaakov. It said the congregation of Jacob. Why would it use congregation in the context of an inheritance? This alludes to the fact that there will be people who weren't born into Klal Israel, who will ultimately congregate around the Jewish people, and they too will be holders of this inheritance. This, I think, is a really nice idea. The Ramban says the reason why it says in the pasuk Morasha kilas Yaakov, that's an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob, is actually to bring out the very specific point that it's not only for people born into the Jewish people, but for all those who convert over the generations of the Jewish people, they too will have a very significant connection to the Torah. So it's an interesting idea to think about. Okay. Moving on to verse 6. And now at this juncture, Moshe Rabbeinu gives a bracha to the different tribes, gives a blessing to each of the tribes of the Jewish people. And so we start with Chi Ruvain V'al Yamos. May Ruvain live and not die, be himself mispar, and let his numbers be let his count be of a good number. There's an obvious question as you go through the blessings to the different tribes. Shimon is excluded here. So we go through all the tribes. Moshe goes through all the tribes except for the tribe of Shimon. And that, of course, jumps out at you. Why would he exclude Shimon? So let's go to the Ramban. Ramban on Pasuk Vav. Yechi Ruvain Amar Rebbe from Yehechel Meruvain Shua B'chor. So first of all, the Ibn Ezra says we began with Reuven because Reuven was the firstborn. So it seems to make sense to begin with Reuven. V'lo hiskir Shimon, and it doesn't mention Shimon. Ba'avur avon pa'or, because of the sin of avodah zarah. Ki ha'ovdim hayu Shimonim u'misparam la'ed. Gam nesiyam nerag v'chein das Rashi v'farshim. So when the Jewish people in the aftermath of the of Parshas Balak, end of Parshas Balak, beginning of Parshas Pinchas, this whole story where Bilam tells them to seduce that their women should seduce the Jewish men and get them to worship the avodah zarah of Peor. It's very unclear in the Psukim who were the ones who were really involved with that avodah zarah. But the Ramban says, look, if you look at the numbers afterwards, Shimon was much less in number than other tribes. He says, why do you think that is? He said, I'll tell you why it is, says the Ramban, because they were the major perpetrators of the sin of worshiping Peor. He says, and by the way, if you had any doubts, which tribe there was one person who was the head of a tribe who publicly had sexual relations with that non-Jewish woman. Who was it? It was the head of the tribe of Shimon. So Ramban says, come on, put two and two together. The head of the tribe of Shimon is very publicly involved with all this stuff. A census afterwards shows that the numbers of Shimon are significantly down. Come on. They were very involved in that sin. And because they were so involved in that sin, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't mention them. That's what Rashi says as well. Ulafi Dati says the Ramban, my opinion is, Ein Misparam Raya. I don't think there's great proof from this number. Bavur Kiadayin Yechsaru Shlosa Asar Elaf Yoser Movada Mesim B'Magefa. Their numbers are short to begin with. Their numbers are short besides the number of total people who died in the plague. So I don't know why their numbers are short, but to assume the whole reason why their numbers are short is because of the sin, that doesn't make any sense, says the Ramban, because we heard about the number of people who died in the plague, in the aftermath of that sin, and that doesn't make up for the shortfall of Shimon. So that's not the pshat, says the Ramban. The Ramban says there are various tribes that have less number at that juncture, so it's hard to work backwards in that regard. Va'od ki hakasav she'omer vayitzamed Yisrael val Peor v'yomer kachas kol rashei ha'am. It doesn't say in the pasuk that the tribe of Shimon got involved in that avodah zarah. It says the Jewish people got involved in that avodah zarah. And when God wants to work on this, God says to Moshe, gather together all the heads of the nation. It doesn't say gather together the elders of Shimon. He says so. It really sounds like that this was a national problem and it wasn't exclusively to one tribe. Also it says in the aftermath of Pinchas's action, God says, Pinchas really saved the Jewish people. That since Pinchas did this act, I didn't annihilate the Jewish people. He didn't say I didn't annihilate the tribe of Shimon. He said I didn't annihilate the Jewish people. So the Ramban says for all these reasons, he really does not think that the reason why Shimon is excluded here is because we can figure out that Shimon were really the ones who did this Avera. The Ramban doesn't think so. We're going to skip what for me is the next paragraph. It's about 15 lines or so. And we're going to go to the line now begins with Vanachon be'enai. Vanachon be'enai. What's correct in my eyes, says the Ramban. Ki ha'kasuv lo yimna b'shiftei Yisrael rak shneim asar. I think this is so interesting. I'm sure we've touched on it before, but I just think it's an interesting idea. He says, look high and low. Whenever the Torah talks about the tribes of the Jewish people, it's always 12. Now that's really interesting because, of course, we know there were 13 tribes. But Yaakov had 12 sons, and then Yosef had 2 tribes come from him, Ephraim and Manasseh. So there were originally 12, and then there became 13. Ramban says, though there, of course, are 13, whenever the Torah groups them together, it's always in a group of 12. When Yaakov on his deathbed gave the blessings, it says, these are the tribes of Israel, 12. So the way Yaakov dealt with it is he didn't give separate blessings to Ephraim and Manasseh. He just gave a blessing to Yosef. So he gave a blessing to each of his sons. Moshe Moshe, on the other hand, felt it very important to refer to the two different entities within Yosef. As we have in the pasuk, it talks about the multitudes of Ephraim and of Menashe. Why did Moshe do it in a separate way than Yaakov did? Yaakov bunched Ephraim and Menashe together. Moshe separated them. So he says, look, a lot has happened since Yaakov's deathbed. So this was just like a general idea that on some scale, Yosef would have two tribes come from him. By this time, there has been assignment of tribes in terms of inheritance of the lands of Israel. There were heads of each tribe got to give a donation, a special offering to the Mishkan. Ephraim and Menashe had the tribes, the head of Ephraim, the head of Menashe had different roles in that. They had different flags. So Ramban says, left and right, they're being treated as separate entities within the Jewish people, Ephraim and Menashe. So it would be bizarre for Moshe to follow the format that Yaakov had laid out when he bunched Ephraim and Menashe together under Yosef's banner. There's another technical point. Yoshua gets mentioned in Moshe's last words here. Now, Yoshua is from Ephraim. That's the younger division of the tribe of Yosef. So once we're specifically making mention to the younger division of the tribe of Yosef, it's going to be bad news to not even mention the older division of the tribe of Yosef. That's going to be bad. So the Ramban says more just because the train has left the station in many ways, and maybe more for political sensitivities. For both of those reasons, it's essential for Moshe to refer both to Ephraim and Menashe as their own entities. So we have a problem. So if we refer to Ephraim and Menashe as separate entities, we're going to be at 13. Maybe we should leave out Levi. Levi doesn't get an inheritance of its own land. He says, no. We have to include Levi because he talks about Levi bringing offerings. And the offerings of Levi are a merit for all the Jewish people. So this is like a vehicle of blessing for everybody. So now we've got a problem. Who's going to be voted off? Not Chas v'Shalom voted out of the Jewish people, but in this grouping, there needs to be some tribe not mentioned. There's so many things in 12. They're always referred to, the tribes are always referred to in 12. There are 12 constellations. There's 12 months in the year. There's 12 assignments of the land in Israel. Okay. By the way, at our Grizim and Areva, which we discussed not long ago, there was 6 tribes on each side, right? So it always seems to be 12. So we will pick this up tomorrow, God willing. So we certainly understand the concept of 12. We certainly understand why Moshe decided to do it differently than Yaakov did in terms of mentioning Ephraim and Menashe separately. But what we still don't understand is why is Shimon the odd tribe out? So we discussed the Ramban about Morasha Kilas Yaakov, a very interesting idea. And we also discussed the Ramban about why Shimon is excluded. Just administrative note, the evening group, the 7:30 Halach group will meet this evening, God willing. And the morning group will meet tomorrow morning, God willing.